Welcome back, everyone. We will start session 7, navigating the state capitol and its importance to your airport, in about 3 minutes. All righty. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the 7th session of our OAOA virtual conference. This session is the navigating the state capitol and its importance to your airport session. Before we get started, a huge thank you to the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission for sponsoring this wonderful session. The Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission promotes aviation, which includes ensuring that the needs of the commerce and communities across Oklahoma are met by the state's 108 public airports that comprise the state's air transportation system and ensure the growth and vitality of the state's aerospace industry. Before I turn the reins over to Grayson here, I would like to share my screen for just 1 second. Make sure you guys go look at the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission's sponsor booth on our conference website. Got a lot of good information to be able to view their website, give them a call, or even email the director, Grayson Arties, Sandra Shelton. They've also got a lot of good downloadable material. If you're looking for windsocks, the form's on here. The OAC has a program for that. The Aeronautics Commission 2020 annual report, the economic impact study, which we should all be familiar with by now, but in case you're looking for where the information can be found, there's a wonderful link right on the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission's website, as well as their booth on our conference website. So again, huge thank you to the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission for sponsoring this wonderful event. Grayson, I will turn it over to you, sir. The show is yours.
Thank you, Lance, and thank you, OAOA, for allowing me to host this wonderful panel today. Let me see if I can share my screen. All right, Lance, how are we looking?
Looking good, sir.
Good, good. Today with us, we have two wonderful panelists, Sandra Shelton and Monty Smith, who are pros at navigating the Capitol and will hopefully present you with a wonderful flight plan on how you can navigate the Capitol as well without going into the lake or the side of your runway or having a crash landing into the mountains. So we're gonna navigate you well, and we're going to get you heading down the right flight path for a very, very smooth landing. I'm Grayson Arties, Director of the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. I'll let the two panelists introduce themselves here in a little bit. The Capitol is very important to what we do here at the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. We have a unique statutory charge to recommend legislation to advance the state's interest in aeronautics. And as we all know, that aeronautics definition is a pretty broad definition. One of our main goals is to ensure that airports and you all have everything that you need from the Capitol, whether that's advocating for infrastructure funding, advocating for the protections of your airports from incompatible and encroaching development, whether that's ensuring that companies on your airport have the tax incentives and the regulatory environment that's needed to be successful in Oklahoma, or whether that's ensuring that our military aviators can fly safely through our skies and can do so while also being able to live in harmony with some of our other states' great and wonderful industries like the renewable energy industry. We have an amazing talent group here today in airports. Each one of you has a unique connection to the Capitol. It's been a great asset the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission has been able to use for many, many years. Even when there's legislation that's being considered that may not have a direct impact on airports. Either I or my predecessor, Vic Bird, called upon each one of you and your bosses and your leaders, the mayors, the city managers, and the important officials in your town to help move legislation throughout the Capitol. It's happened time and time again since 2001 when Vic Bird joined the commission. And it's happened a lot of times since I first joined the commission in 2009. Navigating the Capitol is important. The legislative advocacy of this association will be very, very important for the future success of aviation aerospace. This is not something to be afraid of. These are normal people. We're not talking to the President of the United States or a dignitary from across the pond in Great Britain or the Prime Minister of France. We're talking to normal everyday people that have been elected and sent to the Capitol to do the people's business for Oklahoma. What I hope today our panelists will be able to do is peel back the layers of the onion to show you how the Capitol works, how to involve yourself in the Capitol, and maybe, just maybe, Sandra and Monty will be able to show you where all the skeletons are hid and how to get up on that rotunda, the dome of the Capitol. Well, maybe not that last part. That might get you in trouble with the Capitol Police, but they will definitely show you the ins and outs of how to navigate the Capitol and do so successfully. So, with that being said, I will turn this over to Sandra so that she can introduce herself. I think most of you all know Sandra and her background. And Sandra, I'm going to work these PowerPoint slides. If there's something that you would like to do or move forward with or go back on, you just let me know. I'll be your pilot in command today, and you'll be the navigator.
Great. Can you hear me okay, sir?
I can.
Great. Well, the Oklahoma State Capitol is the greatest place to work in the whole entire world because it is diverse and it is a quilt of personalities and people. There are 101 members in the Oklahoma State Senate and, in the House of Representatives, and 48 senators in the Oklahoma State Senate. There's 149 lawmakers. And so the session begins in Oklahoma on the first Monday in February, and it's declares sine die on the last Friday in May. And so I'm gonna just give you a little bit about myself. I worked for the legislature for 20 years. I worked for 9 years in the House of Representatives for the Democrats. And then I was recruited to work for the Republicans in 2004. And I went to work for Senator Don Barrington. And for the last 5 years, I've worked for the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. I've had the privilege of helping foster and encourage legislation to go through the legislature presented by Grayson and formerly by Director Byrd. So next slide, Grayson, if you don't mind. The requirement to be a legislator is outlined in Article 5, Section, hold on, I can't read this, hold on, 17 of the Oklahoma Constitution. Members of the Oklahoma House of Representatives must be 21, and to be a member of the state Senate, you have to be 25 years old. The legislator must reside in their district. Many times, and you would be shocked by this, but many times people file for office and do not live in the district in which they're filing. Grayson, will you do the next slide for me? By law, the lieutenant governor is presiding over the Senate, and his role is limited to presiding over special sessions and casting the deciding vote in a case of a tie. Where this was really critical, and I think Monty will speak to this as well, was when the the Senate was tied 24-24, the House and the Senate Republicans. And so the lieutenant governor at the time was critical in making those judgment calls. And so the Republicans took the Senate at that time. So next slide, Grayson. You can see that advocacy is super important at the Capitol. And we have Shalon Stanley with Guthrie Regional Airport here talking to Speaker Charles McCall. And next slide, please. And the annual legislative process of how a bill becomes law, I think Monty will probably cover that in her presentation, but it's kind of cumbersome. It begins in December and it concludes in May. And we can send you a copy of these slides as well. Next slide, please, Grayson. There are several types of legislation, and one of the things that we discovered just this year, our friends in the cotton community are trying to make the state fiber cotton, and they're trying to do it through Senate concurrent resolution. And we were very fortunate in 2017 to put in state law Oklahoma Women in Aviation and Aerospace Day on December 9th, and also Oklahoma Aviation and Aerospace Day on August 19th. And so we are very fortunate to have both of those days in state statute. So there's plenty of room for advocacy on those days in our communities. Next slide, please. Something that's interesting that's happening this year is redistricting. And so you may find that your senator or representative may change where your residence is. And also it may change for your airport. You may have to advocate to a new person about your airport. So you might want to keep that in mind. Next slide. This is some resources for you. The okhouse.gov and oksenate.gov are available to you, and you can watch sessions live. Also, you can check votes there, and you can track legislation there free to the public. I think that just about wraps it up, Grayson. Yes. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to Monty.
Thank you, Sandra. I greatly appreciate it. For all those of you who don't know, Sandra's been working by Vic and I's side for several years. We've got some really great things going on in aviation aerospace. And if there's ever a question you have beyond today, I want both of these individuals, both these panelists, to be resources to you. I'm sure they would be more than happy to discuss and kind of visit in terms of what exactly their experiences have been up at the state capitol. So with that being said, there's another individual who works for Secretary Tim Gatz, and I think some of you all know who Secretary Gatz is and have met him. Monty Smith is the government affairs, and I can't get your title right, Monty, so I apologize, but she is doing everything government affairs for the Secretary of Transportation and the Department of Transportation. So Monty, I'll let you take it away and kind of explain your background and role and go from there.
Okay, Grayson, thank you so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Sandra might have sold me a little bit too illustrious. I don't have the background she has. I was kind of surprised, Sandra, to find out about the 20 years. That's incredible. You're tough too. You're a lot tougher than you look if you manage that, because it can get a little. It's a great experience to be at the Capitol, and when a bill happens and gets passed and it's one that you were championing, it's one of the greatest feelings, especially when you know it's going to help your agency and those around you, and maybe even just your community. My background, I've worked at ODOT. I've had a career at ODOT all my life, pretty much. The job I had before I came into the position I'm currently in, working as legislative liaison, was I managed the outdoor advertising control program for the state of Oklahoma. And I did that for a long time. And during my tenure in that position, there were a lot of attempts to change laws. If anyone out there is familiar with that, the billboards you see along the highways, it's a tough lobby. And when they don't like a law, guess what happens? They go in and they try to change it. And so there were several times I would get called up to the principal's office, AKA the director, and hat in hand sit and listen to what we needed to do to get a bill stopped, or what were we going to do to offer alternative language. And so one day, as I'm sitting downstairs minding my own business, I get called up to the third floor again. And I'm just racking my brain thinking, what did I do wrong this time? Who's out to get me? What's happened? And I got offered this position, and a lot of that had to do with my experience defending the department against some of the attempts to change the laws and get us in trouble with Federal Highway Administration. I've been doing this will be my 5th session, and it's a crazy, hectic world. You better eat your Wheaties before you go to work, because let me tell you, they're going to put you through your paces. It gets a little crazy, but it's a unique experience, and the Capitol is amazing. Sandra was right about that. But you need to know where you stand, and you need to be ready to present well. And that's all I'm gonna say for now, but I am very happy to answer any questions, and I will make this offer as well. Anyone that would like to go to the Capitol and hasn't had that experience yet, or is a little uncertain, I offer my services right now to happily take you through the Capitol, introduce you to the chairman, the speaker, the pro tem, anything you have in mind, I'm game. I'd be happy to show off our Capitol. And it is getting incredibly beautiful. There's been a lot of renovations. So if you went a long time ago, let me trust you, it's a different place now.
Thank you, Monty. You're right. Eat your Wheaties. Several of the airport members experienced that last week. We had a mini advocacy day at the Capitol where Alexis Higgins and Christy Slater, the co-chairs of the OAOA Legislative Committee, got together with Sandra and scheduled meetings to go visit with about 35 different legislators. And after that day was over, I think I was about 7 or 8 pounds lighter, and I had definitely worn down the leather on the soles of my shoes. So thank you to Sandra, Alexis, and Christy for doing that. You're right though, Monty. It's a tough environment sometimes, but something that's very important, something that we need to focus on and we need to do on a routine and a regular basis. So going to go through a list of questions here that I have peeled back for these panelists. I would also like the audience in the meantime to be thinking of questions that you would like to ask. Please go ahead and share those via the Q&A or the chat boxes, and then we will get to those questions towards the end of our regular questions for the panelists. So we'll start off. The Oklahoma Airport Operators Association is revitalizing its structure and putting a renewed emphasis on legislative advocacy. I know both of you know that the Capitol can be a very scary place for newbies and people that haven't really been there or experienced it or know what it's all about. But what advice would you have as the association tries to spend more time at the Capitol visiting with the legislators and involving themselves in the legislative process? And Monty, I'll let you go first, and then Sandra can go second.
Well, you need to know the chairman of the committee. I think it's highly important. And I'm going to assume most any bills that you're there to promote, support, or prevent from being passed are going to be relative to aerospace, airports, obviously. Know the chairman, go in and meet them, have a relationship, develop a relationship with them, especially if you're going to be going to the Capitol on a regular basis. And something that might sound really minor, but I'm going to tell you it's vital. Be very nice to the person at the front desk. Those executive assistants, the EAs for the Senate, and the legislative assistants for the House, man, they're important. They are the gatekeeper, and they can prioritize your needs, and they can also find their legislator pretty busy when you need them. So be kind, go in, get to know them, develop a relationship. And one other, and from that same vein, also get to know the legislator. If you find out you're going to be going in to visit with someone, Google them. I mean, I know that sounds silly and kind of possibly infantile, but it's really not. Those personal connections, whether they're relative to the matter at hand or community-based, they can be vital in developing good relationships and working with those legislators. So don't be afraid to learn a little bit about them.
Yeah, Grayson, for me, it's exactly what Monty said. Those relationships are everything. And as a person who sat behind that desk as a legislative assistant for 20 years, it matters if someone is nice to you or not. It is honestly for some, and it should not be the case, but it is the case, whether somebody gets your phone call, whether somebody gets your email, or whether somebody gets your handout, whether or not you are nice to that person. And so you need to always remember that. And plus you need to be respectful. These people are giving service to your community and to your state. They are state employees, and they should and do deserve our respect. And to establish those relationships is very important. Shalon Stanley at Guthrie Edmond Regional, I don't know if she's on here. She's a great example of that with her relationship with Senator Chuck Hall and Representative Gary Mize. I know Christy Slater has met with Representative Marilyn Stark as well. Legislators work Monday through Thursday during the first 5 months of the year. So if you ask them to meet for coffee somewhere, try to make it a Friday and try to accommodate them. If your airport is in Slapout and your representative lives in Woodward, drive to Woodward. Say, I'll come wherever you are just to meet with you. I just want 30 minutes of your time. And then you can begin the process of developing that important relationship that Monty was talking about, and to start presenting some of the challenges to your airport to make your airport the most important thing on their agenda that day.
All right. Thank you both for that. So we all know the Capitol can be an interesting place. You kind of call it an onion. That's why you heard me mention the analogy earlier. And there's lots of layers to that onion. So what's one of the secrets of the Capitol of going about? What kind of secret thing should the airports try and use to their advantage? Is there it could be something as simple as how to navigate the Capitol and physically go around. There could be some secret sauce to your all's advocacy and how you move bills through the process. What's that one piece of advice that you would leave with the airports on something that the everyday person may not know about the Capitol? And Sandra, why don't you go first, and Monty, why don't you go second?
Director, I was really thinking about this, and I would say, and I think Monty can tell you this, regardless, when you set up a day to go and to advocate at the Capitol, you need to leave your personal agenda at home. And if you're upset about a school board vote or a law that they've made about the school system or your taxes or anything of that nature, you need to remember that you're representing the Oklahoma airport community, and you have to be professional in that representation. You need to come dressed for that. you need to come mentally prepared for that. And if you had just had a fight with your spouse or whatever, you need to leave that on the Capitol steps when you walk into that building to make sure that you're representing your city. Because I'll tell you, that building speaks, that dome has a mouthpiece on it, and it tells all kinds of stories, including back to your community and reporting back to your city manager, to your direct report about what your interaction was with that lawmaker. So I would just say to you, make sure that you go mentally prepared and also have had done your homework.
I agree. Well said, Sandra. I just encourage again, it is hectic. Life is very hectic there. Time is a precious commodity. Be respectful of that time factor. And another thing, if you tell them you're going to follow up with something and do it fairly quickly, accurately, but quickly, because they hold those kinds of things against you. If you fail to get back, you become that non-responsive individual that they don't really want to deal with. And be respectful of their time. It's good to develop a little bit of a personal angle if you can, to some degree, but also you don't want to be that person that they hide behind the door and say, tell them I'm not here, because they take up too much of my time, and they're running from committee to the floor, to writing bills, to the staff. So they're busy folks, and just be respectful of their time, and get back with them and be responsive when you tell them you're going to.
That is very true. Time is a commodity. I will tell you that the time we all work on a day-to-day basis is not the time of the Capitol. It's a whole different animal up there at the Capitol. And so please be responsive. But yes, don't be a pest, I think would be the best way to put it. And kind of back to Sandra's point, one of the hardest things that I was able to learn was you have to put your personal politics aside. When you're working at the Capitol, whether D or R or independent, there will be political conversations you get roped into. There might be a legislator that asks you your opinion on something. And always be cognizant of, I always say, leave your politics at home. You're there advocating for your particular industry or your particular issue, because once you get involved in the actual politics of that building, it can consume and really downplay and water down what you're actually advocating there for. And I mean, we've seen that with some of our legislative initiatives that were purely non-political. We ran into a legislative issue when it came to trying to pass aviation safety legislation for anemometer towers. It got involved in politics in the last 2 weeks of session for something completely unrelated to the issue at hand, and it killed that bill. Fortunately for us, we had a companion bill. That was the Senate bill. Fortunately, we had a companion House bill on the same exact issue, and that was able to get revitalized, revived, and passed at the end of the day. And so leave the politics at home. Make sure that you're on time, respectful, and have that 60 to 120 second elevator speech and pitch ready to go to be able to sell your story to that legislator. Moving on, we've all experienced good and bad things at the Capitol. We all have those stories that we can remember. But tell us a time where you've done or said something that was regrettable. Either you miscommunicated or it was misinterpreted. We all know that happens many times, especially at the Capitol. Can you give an example of that moment where something negative occurred, and how are you able to resolve and continue to advocate for the missions that you wanted to advocate for? And Monty, I'll let you go first on this one, and Sandra, you go second.
Yeah, it took me a while to narrow all those faux pas down, Grayson. But one that I think had a good learning lesson for me, an embarrassing learning lesson, but a good learning lesson. Sometimes you're going to be there to promote a bill. Sometimes you're going to be there to hopefully try to stop a bill or change a bill. But regardless, know that bill. Read it from beginning to end. Do not trust captions. Do not trust titles. Those bills can change. They can be amended. If you blink, you miss something. Read it. And before you go and meet with someone, get online, go to the state legislature website, look at the latest version to make sure there's not one that you're not familiar with. And that way you go in, and if you're pushing to have something promoted, if you're putting your reputation on the line, by, in this instance, if you've got an airport that you're representing, you don't want to go in there and not realize there's some language in the back that might be derogatory to your community or something along those lines. I did have that happen. It was a bill that we had been asked to support, Department of Transportation, and had my marching orders. And I knew from a year before what the intent of that bill was to do. And I also, which was still in there, but unfortunately there was some additional parts of that bill that had been changed that I was not aware of. Shame on me, should have read it, being lazy, running around crazy over at the Capitol. I didn't. And right before committee happened, right before committee started, and right before the bill was heard, I flipped over and saw a bunch of strike throughs and changes. That was very uncomfortable because I then had to tell the presenter. I had to be texting, trying to get his attention and let him know. I ended up going with hat in hand to several different members' offices after the fact to apologize on behalf of myself and the agency. And that was a bad situation. So I will warn you once again, read that bill from beginning to end. They're not exciting, they're not sexy usually, but read it, or otherwise you will have egg on your face, or you have that potential to have egg on your face should they go awry.
All right.
I think for me, at the Capitol, and Monty can tell you this, information is currency. It's the most currency that you have at the state Capitol. Mm-hmm. And so as if I was an airport operator or an airport manager, I would be careful in measuring my words, especially like let's say that that Senator so-and-so has flown into your airport and something happened. That information is not to be shared because it will come back later. And there's an old saying in politics that people who know don't say, and people who say don't know. And Monty can tell you, we hear all kinds of things at the Capitol. I hear one day I saw Monty with Secretary Gatz, and this was 2 years ago, and Secretary Gatz looked really upset. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm so scared. And it wasn't even my thing. And you just hear things. And so I would tell you this, as if you plan to go and advocate at the Capitol, make sure that you don't become involved in information exchange because you will be out of your depth, I assure you. So just make sure that you are mindful of the information and the power that you have in being a local constituent.
Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, that being that local constituent, they hear from myself, Monty, Sandra on behalf of our agencies and our organizations all the time, but we don't vote in their district. You do. And the members of your airport vote in their district. They are all constituents. And that's really how you have to develop that relationship with that legislator so that they can earn your trust, so that when either an issue pops up, that they're going to call you and ask you, hey, how should I vote on this issue? Or when you go visit with them and say, hey, we need to pass this piece of legislation, they're going to listen to you and have the trust that you're selling them the bag of goods that's really important for the airport and the community you represent. Sandra, you definitely have a unique perspective. In fact, you mentioned a little bit earlier that before you joined OAC, you were on the receiving end of a lot of advocacy. You were the gatekeeper for senators and representatives. So from your perspective, what piece of advice would you give the airport operators today about how they should go about advocating for their missions from the EALA perspective, and how can you suggest to them to build that relationship with their local legislator when they're up visiting at the Capitol? We'll go, Sandra, you can answer that, and I've got a question for Monty here next.
Sure. I think finding common ground with that legislator is going to be really critical, and just developing those relationships that we talked about before. I think the most important thing is that you don't assume that the legislator that you're speaking to knows about your airport. When I first came to work for aeronautics, I had worked 20 years in the Capitol, and during my interview, Director Byrd had said, why do you want to work here? And I said, because I don't know that much about the Aeronautics Commission, and I've worked here 20 years. And so I wanted people to understand how incredible the Oklahoma airport system is. So you need to take that same innocence and you need to go to the lawmaker with that, because they may be like Senator Standridge, who happens to be a pilot, but he's a pharmacist. He may not have known about the airport system, or that, other Senator Chris Kidd from Lawton, he was a school teacher. He probably didn't know that much about the airport system, but he carried the Senate bill that made Oklahoma Aviation and Aerospace Day for us and got it passed and signed by the governor. So when you're making those conversations with those lawmakers, make sure to tell, Grayson would tell me stories and he'd use all of these aviation acronyms. And I would have to look at Michelle or somebody in the office and say, please translate for me what he just said. The AWAS, I didn't know what that was. And so those are things that I want you to be able to remember, that when you're talking to your legislators, break it down why we need an AWAS, those sort of things. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Sandra. I think I'm very poorly afflicted with that same disease, and a lot of us in aviation are. We have to be able to bring our message down to a non-aviator's perspective, because, yeah, we might get lucky with a Rob Standridge or a Senator Racino or Senator Pugh or Representative Stegall that understands aviation. They are pilots that have been in the business, but 95-97% of legislators out there have no idea outside of, a runway is a long stretch of pavement that aircraft land on. So when you airport managers are talking to your legislators and developing that relationship, try and relate it from the common perspective that you're telling somebody, like you're telling your boss, your city manager, or your mayor that may not have any inkling about aviation. That's how you need to communicate. Thank you, Sandra. Monty, being that ODOT is an appropriated agency, you kind of deal in a whole different level of advocacy and legislative tracking that OAC has never really experienced before. Tell us how the budget process works and how that's different from the standard legislative process that's all about policy making.
Okay, well, first of all, it's just really all I've known. So I'm not sure. I hope I bring what you need to the table. One of the things I know that we're required to do differently is we have to present a budget and performance report and presentation to both the House and Senate appropriation committees. And we usually do that in January. So it's before the session begins, kind of prepping the way. That is, that they usually have those. I mean, they've been doing it kind of different the last few years have been just a little bit different, but we've had a lot of budget shortfalls over the last few years. Last year, not really counted, but we've, in fact, that's really about all I knew for the first years I had this position. So it's been open to the full membership typically who will come in. This past year, we had 3 different presentations that we had to give, same budget and performance review, but we pretty much talk about what we've accomplished, what we need to accomplish, and where we might have some areas that we're working towards bettering, and vital to not having our statutory appropriations taken or shortened for us. There are some appropriated agencies I know that go in and request additional funding. We don't do that, not at least in my tenure working in this position. We don't request beyond what's in statute right now to be appropriated to the department, but sometimes we might request that we get some redirection of funds to be put back in place. We have done that before, because in some of these years of budget shortfall, we've even negotiated with the appropriation chairs where they will take money in an area where the cut might be less than it would have been whether they took it from. For instance, we have so many variations of where the funding gets funneled. You've got public transit, and then you've got rail, so or way station revolving funds. So maybe if you need that money, we understand, and transportation manages these large pools of money. Take it here, we can live with this, but don't take it here. We really need that for instance, the public transit. That's what our statewide rural transit agencies use to match federal funds. So there's some negotiation that goes into place, but until that big general appropriations bill hits the press, we're just sitting there kind of holding our breath, hoping, you know, that we get the majority of our appropriated funds as, you know, as laid out in statute. I really, as for being different, that's about, you know, that's about it. We get to, maybe our budgeting is somewhat easier by knowing what to expect and hoping for the best. But that's really pretty much the difference. Then I know the budget performance reviews that we do. Obviously, that's something that's a little special. Gives us a chance to try to lay out the good things we've accomplished and get the word out. And other than that, I think we're just yet another state agency.
Well, thank you, Monty. Yes, I know as airports have asked us, hey, how are ways that we can get additional funding into infrastructure, specifically airport infrastructure and you know, infrastructure that will support economic development type activities. They have kind of started looking at some of the, well, can we shake loose some appropriated dollars out of the legislature to attune for some of those needs? And so that's certainly a good perspective to bring, given that ODOT experiences that on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. This question's for both of you all. As the OAOA organization looks to reinvigorate the legislative position, there are obviously other associations, groups, entities out there that advocate for whatever it might be. As Sandra was indicating earlier, the Cotton Association. What would you suggest? Is there one association or maybe a group of associations that you can point to and say, hey, these folks do it really, really well. And in OAOA, you might want to talk to them, hear how they do their advocacy, how they develop their relationships with legislators, to maybe gather some ideas and figure out how best to go about doing the legislative advocacy and relationship development that airports need to do. So Sandra, why don't you take that one first, and then Monty, I'll let you finish it off.
History is a great example of what's going on at the Capitol, of things that worked and have not worked. When I worked for Senator Barrington, he was a firefighter. He was the fire chief of Lawton. And so he carried a lot of firefighter legislation. And they were doing a big firefighters bill, and it had to do with rural fire departments and also being able to have tenure in the retirement system. And so they had this massive bill, this omnibus bill of firefighting measures coming into, and so different little fire departments from across the state. And this really speaks to the Oklahoma airport operators, because you guys are just little silos sort of across the state, the 108 airports within our system, that they had all these ideas and no one was on the same page. And Senator Barrington finally threw up his hands one day after about 25 different firefighting townships had come to him with these ideas. And he said, you guys need to have a meeting and get it together before we do this legislation, because it's going to fail on the floor because of the chaos involved in this. And those people were also talking to lawmakers throughout this process. And so everyone was really confused. And so I think a congruent message from the Oklahoma airport operators is critical to your success, to make sure that if Tulsa International Airport says we have an $800 billion shortfall in needs, and then Oklahoma City Airport says, well, we think we're doing just fine, they're going to look at the Aeronautics Commission and say, well, you know, what's the truth? So we need to make sure that our message is clear and that we're all together on the same page. And so that would be my suggestion.
Of course, I'm highway, bridge, relay. You know, that's what I live and breathe. So I'm gonna use the example of the Oklahoma Association of General Contractors. Bobby Stem's their executive director, and the guy's a dynamo. He preaches, lives, pushes, cheerleads them along, but he puts forth a lot of effort to educate the legislative members and the public about their agenda. And another thing he'll do is he will coordinate visits to work sites, to facilities, to the different facilities, and then set up gatherings, invite the legislators to let them network with the members. The that's the best way to fully understand, is getting those legislators out to your sites. And I could see the airports doing this as well. And you probably already do something along these lines, but having someone that really gets out there and pushes the agenda and also works with any other agencies that are related to the industry. You combine forces, it just makes a stronger front, and we rally for them, they rally for us, and everyone sings kumbaya and goes home happy. But I think you do need you need someone that can kind of facilitate those meetings, get them out of the capital allocation too. I'm going to tell you, when I visit with most of the legislators, they enjoy those outings. I mean, you probably think they're so busy, and I know we sat here and told you, and yes, they are. But those are the kinds of things that help them understand, and especially if they're going to have to present a bill, maybe they were thinking of even arguing against a bill. Sometimes those facility visits, going on site and seeing how it really works and understanding the problem can sure make a difference. And I just think the Association of General Contractors does a fantastic job of getting out to others and bringing the members to the locations to see what's going on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Monty. And it really is pretty amazing that, OAOA is advocating for airports, but there are some similarities and some cohesiveness that could occur between places like the Association of General Contractors. Their contractors work on airports just like they work on roads, highways, and bridges. The Oklahoma Municipal League advocates on behalf of cities and towns, and a majority of our airports in the state of Oklahoma are owned and operated by cities and towns. So OAOA, you might say, might want to get a little closer and learn a little bit from OML, the Association of General Contractors, or other associations that may have a synonymous mission, or at least a similar mission, and try and leverage those existing associations to OAOA's benefit. We've got a couple of questions here from our audience. First and foremost, when will redistricting be released? Do we know that? I honestly don't know. That's not a question I could answer.
I don't know a lot about the redistricting process. 10 years ago, I worked for the Senate during the redistricting process. I know that the population shifts, and that's why after the federal census, the state is tasked with creating the redistricting process and committees. And they change the 101 House districts and the 48 Senate districts and the 5 congressional seats within the state. And in 2022 of the calendar year is when the new districts begin. And so the race for the 22 Senate and House races that's the first time they will be in the new districts. So I'm not sure if that answers the question. I hope it did. That's not my area of expertise, but that's my understanding of it.
And I do know that there was an emergency meeting called today. There was an original meeting, and then they called a second one. So they're working hard, diligently on it. I know, but I'm with you, Sandra. I think that's pretty top secret. I keep getting, you talked about information. I'll get a word from one legislator. Well, this isn't public. This isn't for the public consumption yet, but it's looking like we're going to be changing here, changing there. So they're taking it pretty serious and talking about it. But as a drop dead date, I'm not sure. But I would be happy to check and see if someone might have, such as the chairman that are currently over those committees, to see if they might have a potential date, and get back with Grace and let you know.
That might be interesting, just generally. I mean, I don't think we need to know the release date, but generally, is this come out in the summer of this year? Is it for the fall? Is it by the end of session? I think that would be interesting for us to know. So if you could find that out, we'll pass that along back to the OAOA members. Another question: how often should airports be visiting or talking with their legislators? And this is up for everybody, and I'll start off answering the question as often as you all want. The answer to that, there's no wrong answer except for never. That is the wrong answer. But I would recommend highly at least once a month, if nothing more than just a simple check-in. But I think there are a lot of other things that I plan to close this panel with. We can discuss at that point in time. But there are some things that they should be doing. But what, Monty, Sandra, what do you guys think in terms of how often should they be visiting or talking with their state senator and state representative?
I think for me, Grayson, maybe once a month, just to check in once a month. And what, depending on it, it really depends on the committee process and where the bill is. The first 3 weeks of session is the really important committee process. And then they vote on the floor on all of those bills, and it flips to the other House of Origin. And so there's a 3 weeks of committee process during that time as well. So it's really critical during the committee process time that you're making that contact. And also then a nice email to the entire body of either the House or the Senate is fine to support a bill that the Aeronautics Commission or that your association has brought forward. There may be something that you guys might want to create in state statute, the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association Day or something like that, or by Senate concurrent resolution, which I think would be great if you guys did that. I think it'd be a great challenge for you to do that maybe in 2022. To think about that, or you could probably do it late in the session to do an SCR. But I think that Monty, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have anything to add. I think you've expressed it well. The answer is I don't really have anything to add to that.
Okay. So, one of the things that I would like to emphasize before I read this next question is, OAC is here to help you. Monty, Sandra, myself, we're all here to help you, be a resource for you to navigate the state capitol. But the next question is, what is the best way for airport operators to know what the most important issue or prioritize what we should be advocating? And I think I'll start that off. I think that's what the association is doing. I think that's the legislative process. That's what the OAOA board will consider. We, OAC, obviously always bring forward some kind of legislation every year to advance the state's interest in aeronautics. But if there's something we're missing or something we're not putting enough attention on, that's what OAOA is intended for. They're intended to be the voice of airports and what do you need? So what do you think the best way that airport operators should go about prioritizing their needs or identifying the most important issues? Monty, why don't you start, and then I'll let Sandra finish up.
Okay. Well, I don't prioritize for your group, but I read through every bill. I go through them, and first of all, my priority list is going to be anything that has the impetus of harming our funding. That's a scary, anything that could shut us down, anything that could, and it all goes back around to funding typically, anything that could get us in hot water with the Federal Highway Administration. You have to look at those kind of regulatory issues and make sure that it's not going to cost you in the long run from a funding perspective. And then just stay alert. I'm assuming through the process that you have in place that there are updates and everything is sent out to the members and the members review. And every now and then you'll have someone come back with something that might be specific to their area. And maybe it's community based. I don't know. Could be whether or not it's in a municipality. So there's so many tentacles out there that where a bill could go awry and cause you, cause you concern. So just stay alert. You've got, I will tell you guys, you've got strong advocates in Grayson and Sandra. And I know Vic Bird was, of course, they ought to have a statue of him outside the Capitol somewhere. They stay alert. They're on it. They're looking out for you. But don't assume that they've seen everything. If you hear rumors of a bill coming up or just someone ask you about one, reach out to them immediately and let them research it for you. They have the capabilities of doing that and the resources. But it's just a matter of staying alert. Put the trackers on, turn it on. Watch out for anything that has the potential to harm your funding. That's usually utmost important to me. It's about what I guess I'll offer.
All right. Thank you, Monty. Sandra, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think Monty's right. An easy tool for you to use, the Lens program, is at oksenate.gov. It's free to you. You can track bills there by subject matter. And then if there's also something called Legiscan that is free to you, you can go and put in keywords like airport, runway, aeronautics, aviation, aerospace, all of those key phrases, and you can track your own legislation. That's Legiscan, legiscan.com, and that will be very useful to you. And I would also, encourage the legislative committee to have maybe a subcommittee, because the airport needs of a municipal airport or a community airport is different than the needs of a international airport. And so you may divide that up by region, or classification of airport. So you might think about that, and hopefully that'll be useful information to you as well.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate that. And obviously we're here to help however we can. If, as Monty said, if there's something that pops up on your radar screen, or you're hearing a rumor flying around out there, if we don't know about it, we can definitely go track it down and find the inside scoop of what's going on. I want to leave you with this closing message today that legislative advocacy and being at the state capitol is very important. You all are our partners. We're one or two people, three, if you include Monty, to advocate for aviation aerospace. There's a couple others in state government. Department of Commerce, obviously big advocate for aviation aerospace, but we are small compared to the breadth and the width of what airport operators represent to the state. You are our arm for legislative advocacy. Your connection to the local district, to the local community, and to that actual representative or senator is extremely important. So I can't say enough that you need to become active participants with your legislators, invite them out to the airports. The legislative session only happens for 4 months out of the year. The other 8 months out of the year, you need to be talking to these folks, inviting them out to the airport. Anytime you have a pancake breakfast or a burger burn, or you have an airport board meeting or whatever it might be, get them out to the airport at least once a year. They need to come out, walk around, look at the pavement. If you can get them up in an airplane, great, get them up in an airplane. I'm sure you have plenty of board members or pilots at the airport that would love to take legislators up for a ride and just show them the airport from the air and really explain to them the importance of aviation and aerospace. You must get involved. This has to be an active mission for the OAOA Association, and we are here to help however we can. As COVID starts winding down, we're going to get out. We're going to get out in the communities more often. We're going to go back out and do some of those town halls and those road trips across the state that we had done in 2018 and 2019. We're going to get back out there. We're going to invite legislators. The other thing that you need to be thinking about, even longer term, is who are the elected officials in your community going to be for the future? Your city council members, your school board members, chamber economic development officials, business entities that have a political affiliation. Some of we call it almost the farm team for becoming a Politico in Oklahoma is the field rep and our congressional staffers. Those individuals, I would say probably, I don't know, better than half the time, end up becoming state senators or state representatives. Those folks that work for people like Senator Inhofe, Senator Langford, Congressman Cole, and Congressman Lucas, et cetera, et cetera. Those are people you need to develop relationships with, because not only will they be here today helping you at the federal level or helping you at the local level, but that relationship could be developed, and when they go on to be elected as a state representative or a state senator, you'll already have that defined relationship with that individual, and they'll already know about the importance of your airport and the importance of our industry today. So start early, start often, don't be a pest, but I'd almost be willing to bet that any one of you, when you interact with the legislator, are not going to be a pest. They're going to be very appreciative of you and seeing what airports and aviation has to offer. And more importantly, aviation aerospace has become the hot topic at the Capitol. Everybody wants to be involved. That wasn't always the case back in the early 2000s. If Vic was around, he would tell you the stories of the Great Plains Airlines and the rocket plane really soured the legislature on aviation aerospace issues. Today, you can't go talk to a legislator about aviation aerospace without them getting excited and want to jump in and cannonball into that pool and just soak up everything that they can for aviation aerospace. So let's take advantage of this. Let's move forward as a state, as an aviation aerospace industry. I know we can do it. Together, we're a team, and I'm here to help. We're all here to help, and we want you to be all that you can be for the airport and the aviation and the aerospace industry. So With that being said, thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you today. Lance, I don't want to give any secrets away, but you may want to say a few things about what's on the horizon with some of the events and the games. I don't know if you want to sneak peek at that or not, but I'll let you be the judge, sir.
Thank you, sir. And we are going to give away a little bit of information here in just a second. But first, Monty, Sandra, Grayson, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming on with us today and explaining a little bit about the process and what we can do to be successful in our endeavors moving forward. With that being said, Grayson kind of alluded to it a little bit, but our legislative adventure for OAOA has been, in my opinion, lackluster over the last 5 years. It was this year's board's overall goal to kind of promote Oklahoma airports through OAOA more than what we've done in the past. And with that being said, we put a chair, Alexis Higgins, and vice chair, oh, help me out. I just blanked. Christy Slater. Christy, please don't shoot me. I apologize. Chair Alexis Higgins and Vice Chair Christy Slater on the duck. All right, they are on it like a duck on a June bug. Okay, they are pushing new legislative items and getting our association involved in legislative matters. One of the fantastic ideas that Alexis and Christy has had recently is this legislative challenge for the 2021 year. From May 1st to September 21st, we are going to be challenging all of our airports in OAOA. Engage in your local, regional, and state legislators in discussions. Have them out at your airport. Invite them to your burger burns. Have them come out for a get-to-know-you session, a cup of coffee, a first-time flight. Any of those items, all hosted at your own specific airports. Okay, so what's the goal? How do you get involved? Well, first off, you've got to contact your legislators in either your local, regional, or state areas. Local being your mayor, your city council officials, your regional being your county commissioners, county assessors, or perhaps even tribal chief in your local area. And then your state elected officials, your state representatives, your senators, your local lieutenant governors, or your governor out at your airport. Okay, each one of these areas is a one entry for a drawing. So if you have a local official out, that's one entry. If you have a regional official out, that's another entry. If you have a state official out, that's another entry, adding up to 3 entries total for your airport. So once you get them involved and you get them out to your airport for a good time, make sure you get a photo with them. A photo with you and them with the airport in the background, or perhaps you, them, and your staff with the airport, whatever you deem is most beautiful for you, because we're going to share it on our Facebook page. We're going to share it everywhere we possibly can on OAOA. I'm sure OAC will take the photos too and run with them, which is all good things. But submit those photos with a little bit of details about why they were out, their name, information, all those good things. And then at the end of this at the end of this challenge, you will be entered to win a $500 grand prize to be spent at your airport. Okay, so spend it on things like buy your employees lunch, buy your employees a fancy dinner, a gift bag, a goodie bag. Just be thankful and give thanks to those that support your airport. Okay, so the $500 is up to you. This is OAOA's legislative start into getting our members out to our airports. It is extremely important that we do that, and it is extremely important that OAOA is the go-to for our local representatives when we have questions arise or bills arise in the House or State Senate. Grayson, thank you again. I appreciate all of you. Before we end today's session, we do have a couple of items to cover. I'm sure you're all looking forward to the waypoint code. The waypoint code for session 7 is advocate. That is advocate. You would advocate for your airport. There are also 2 gift baskets to be given away for this session. Again, huge thank you to the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission for not only putting this together, but hosting this session for all of us to learn new things about what we can do to improve our airport that we manage. The first gift we have available is this wonderful Made in Oklahoma basket, sponsored by the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. This Made in Oklahoma basket, the winner of this Made in Oklahoma basket is Hank MacArthur. Hank MacArthur out of Lawton. So congratulations, Hank. The second item, or the second gift basket, is what we're calling the Ring Electronics gift basket. Again, sponsored by the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. The winner of this Ring Electronic gift basket is Mike Middleton. Mike Middleton out of Cushing. So congratulations, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining session 7 today. Here shortly, we will, in about 8 minutes or so, we will begin session 8, which is dealing with aviation fuel and what you need to know and keep your fuel safe at your airport. We will see you all very shortly.